I was actually a classically trained ballet dancer and studied architecture and have really always been involved in artistic pursuits of one sort or another from a very young age. I decided that I wasn't very good at making, but that perhaps I would be better at presenting, and that I always felt that I wanted to put something back into the world, and it seemed to me making conceptual matchmaking between artists and collectors and institutions was really a very creative pursuit. I mean, I was so naive, I knew nothing. I had no understanding of how to run a business. I absolutely had no idea about what representing artists really meant. I had no financial backing. I mean, my family and I basically built out my first space. And then very early on, I met a wonderful man who's no longer with us. His name was Kim Watson. He's a very, very dear friend. And I'll never forget our first meeting together because he said, all right, first of all, I want to know how much money do you have? I said, I don't have any. He said, well, you need to close immediately. In 1989, 18 months after I opened the gallery, we had a huge earthquake here in San Francisco, and my building was red tagged, and we had 24 hours to move out, essentially. And I think what happened then was it really forced me to reevaluate what my priorities were, who the artists were I was working with, and really why I was even doing this. And I hate to admit that it was somewhat strategic because I do this from a position of really caring about the artists and their process, and so it was a hard transition for me to actually come to terms with the fact that it was a business, that I was the business partner to these artists. It was my job to learn how to translate their work in a way that could be beneficial to them. I think that there's always a handful of artists that do the heavy lifting and allow the others to enjoy the full range of representation of a gallery. And I think that there needs to exist a generosity of spirit within the artistic community to both acknowledge that, accept it, embrace it, and they're not always the same artists that are supporting, and they're not always the same artists that are receiving. I mean, I don't really follow the sort of traditional rules, if you will, in quotation marks, about how you find artists. I travel extensively. Of course, I do a lot of research on the internet. I read a lot of publications. I listen to my colleagues a little bit. But more than that, I talk to the artists I already work with. There's a handful of artists I work with that are very internationally plugged in, and whose intellect and aesthetic I trust enormously. So I often ask them, who do they respect? I mean, we do a lot of work with museums. I would say that probably 60% of our annual volume is with institutions, maybe more. I think this year it's going to be about 85%, actually. And it will take often up to 12, 14 months to close a museum deal and another 6 to 9 months for them to pay. So I'm working on deals today that will be realized in 2 years. I'm still not sure I'm successful. I mean, here's the problem, because there's still art fairs I can't get into. There's still artists that I can't work with. There's still, I see all my friends and my colleagues who are taking vacations and going here and going there, and I'm still working until I drop. So what is success, really? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think to be successful, one has to keep reinventing oneself. I don't want to, oversimplify it. Because, for example, I have one artist that I work with, a photographer, that he must have, a publicist or something, because every time I turn around, he's got a new book, he's got 5 more museum shows. I don't really even hear about it. I mean, I don't know how he does it. It's unbelievable. And then there are other artists I work with that, they come in with their lists every month, and they sit down and they go, I really want something to happen at this museum or that museum, and how do we do it, and what relationships do you have? And it's this long, protracted conversation, and sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it isn't. So, my basic answer is be as proactive as you know how, network as nicely as you can, and keep your gallery in the loop and let them do the negotiating.